Hello, Paula. How are you?
Hello, Nina. I'm fine. And you?
I'm okay. I'd like to ask you some questions for the podcasts. The first one is where are you from?
First of all, Nina, thank you for having me. It would be a pleasure to participate in your podcast. Actually from the southeast of Brazil, São Paulo state.
Mm. And how long have you lived in Odessa?
I have been living in Odessa since October 2020, but once a year I return to Brazil and I spend there a month or a little bit longer, depending on the occasion. So give it or take, almost 4 years here in Odessa.
Why did you choose Odessa for living? How
Mhm.
was that in the beginning? How did it happen?
Mhm. Well, my husband is Ukrainian. We married in Brazil, and my husband lived there for 5 years. But during the pandemics, my husband got a job offer to work for a company from China. And it would be, a completely crazy schedule for him to work with the team from China, considering the hours, the difference of hours.
Mhm.
So we agreed that it would be better for him to work with a team from China if he would be living here in Ukraine. And for me, I actually got very excited with the idea because I had never lived abroad for such a long time. So I I was very curious to have this experience. And I also wanted to have the chance to get to know the family of Sergei better and also to know more about the culture of Ukraine. So that's how we ended up coming here. But the idea was not to leave, actually. When we came, the plan was to be just for 1 year.
Mhm.
And after that, we were supposed to return to Brazil. But the truth is that that first year turned out to be so great. We had so many great experiences that we decided to stay longer.
Mhm. And do you like it here?
Absolutely. Odessa is specifically is my favorite city here in Ukraine. I mean, I don't know many cities. I know Odessa, Lviv, and Kiev, but definitely Odessa has a special place in my heart.
Uh-huh. And what's your favorite place here in Odessa?
Mhm. Favorite places. To be honest, I just like walking around in the city because I think the atmosphere here feels very special. What I'm going to share, it's, it's like my impression, but I also heard from another Brazilian who came here and she said it feels like the stage of a movie. Maybe because in Brazil we don't have such a you know big historical centers, with all the architecture still intact. Not to say that some of those buildings don't require repair, but it is just so impressive to see. The city overall is so full of history and culture that it is pleasant to be outside. It feels like you are connected with the history of the city.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And your favorite coffee shop, a restaurant, or
Mhm.
store?
I have three favorite ones. I will not say them into like the most preferred one because it would be unfair. But I have three names here: Kumanets and Rinalha and Nash Restaurant. Kumanets and Nash Restaurant, they offer basically Ukrainian cuisine,
Yeah.
and Kinkalia is mainly Georgian food. But
Mhm,
those are the places that I always think people that come here for the first time, they have to check this restaurants. They have
mhm,
to
mhm,
know the typical dishes of Ukraine. And Georgian food is just impressive too, so I think it's worth knowing because we don't have it in Brazil.
mhm, mhm. And what's your favorite place of shopping?
For shopping, to be very honest, I don't have one favorite place. Usually, when I need something, I go to the shopping mall, but maybe this is my something that I usually do in Brazil. So
Mhm,
we Brazilians, we usually go to the shopping mall when we need to look for clothes or
mhm, mhm.
furniture or
Okay,
anything.
yeah.
But so this is where I usually go. But depending on what it is, I can easily buy online.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, sure. It's very comfortable here. And Odessan dish or dishes,
Mhm.
your favorite.
Mhm. There are many that I like, and of course, borscht is always,
Mm-hmm.
special,
Mm-hmm.
especially when done at home. I think borscht is done prepared at home. They have a taste that is very, very rich and usually richer than the ones prepared at a restaurant.
Of course.
But one dish in particular that I think is necessary to try is vareniki made of cherries.
Uh-huh. What is
We
vareniki? Can you explain for those ones who don't know? Uh,
Yes. When I have to talk or to explain what is vareniki for my friends in Brazil, I usually say that it kind of looks like a capelete, but
yeah,
with
yeah.
cherries inside,
Uh-huh.
and it is served with sugar. I remember the first time I had vareniki, I I actually I was I didn't like it so much the first time because I had it for lunch, but in my mind it didn't make sense that I was having something sweet for lunch.
Mm-hmm.
But then I gave it a second try, and I don't know what happened, and my mind changed, and I actually like it so much that I even I tried to take frozen vareniki to Brazil, and you can imagine that it didn't work out because it melted. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I
And
think
do you know these vareniki with cherries? They are served with sour cream, some sugar, and cherry juice.
yes, cherries. I'm not a huge fan of sour cream,
Uh-huh.
so I usually add only sugar.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And your opinion about pros and cons of living here in Odessa?
Mhm. I will start with the pros.
Yep.
First, I think the city is very easy to walk. Um, and here everything is more plain, unlike my city in Brazil, where it's full of hills. So, walking
Uh-huh,
can
uh-huh.
be kind of tiresome. Here it is plain. You have a good transportation system. You have very large sidewalks. There are many options of commerce, restaurants, cafes, especially in the city center. And of course, overall touristic attractions, museums,
Mhm.
monuments. So,
Theaters
bes-
and concert halls, yeah.
yes, many. And
Mhm.
parks. Also, another pro for Ukraine, for Odessa is that the city, for me, it feels very safe. Um, you can, I've heard some people say that Odessa is not so safe, but to be very honest, for me, a Brazilian, comparing to my life in how it used to be in Brazil,
Mhm.
I think Odessa feels very safe. For example, I don't fear that someone is going to assault me, out of the blue, take my phone,
Mhm.
or point a gun at me. So I like here, me and my Brazilian friends, we usually say, I can't believe that I can just walk with my phone in my hands at night, not worrying if someone is going to come and just take it from me.
Mhm.
So safety, I feel very safe here.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Me too. Me too. Yeah.
mhm. But
Uh,
why does Odessa have this? Why some people say that Odessa is not safe? Where does it come from?
maybe because of corruption.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. And cons of living here.
Mhm. Let me see what else. There is another pro. Well, I think I mentioned the parks, but I think that it's important to emphasize that the parks here, not only there are plenty, but they are spread throughout the city. And the city where I live in Brazil, even though it's between two major cities, São Paulo and Campinas, in order to get to those parks, you actually need to get there by car or by bus.
Uh-huh.
It's not like here where you can just go to the supermarket or just go for a walk and eventually be in a different type of park.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
this is also very good. But the cons, well, I'm not sure how much of a con it is because, for example, I don't have a car here, but I have the impression that the city doesn't have many parking places.
Mhm.
And in Brazil, parking places are a real need, like especially in the city center, because we have many, many shops at the city center. So especially when you have celebrations like at the end of the year, like because of Christmas or New Year's Eve, people
Mhm.
want to buy things. So the city center gets super crowded and everybody wants to get there by car.
Mhm.
So in here, I don't see many. Um,
Yeah, it's a problem. Yes.
yeah. And also, I think that the street lights here, they could be better.
Uh-huh.
Some streets, when you walk at night, even though it feels safe, I just think that there is not enough light. And it feels a bit weird for me because in Brazil, when you have a street where the light is not strong at night, or
Mhm.
it's like this type of orange color, it feels unsafe for Brazilians usually,
Mhm.
so we avoid it. And I think that the other con is more about, for people that live here for longer, and if they don't speak Ukrainian or Russian, it can get really hard to find doctors that speak English, in other professions as well. I mean, if you need a lawyer, it's not so
Mhm.
easy to find someone.
So you need a translator in these cases, you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you are here during the war. Is it dangerous? What do you feel?
I think dangerous, yes, there is always a risk. Um, and despite the fact that I got somehow used to living here, I'm very much aware of the risks and of the moments that we actually fear for our lives. So yes, it is dangerous. I don't think it should be something to be ignored.
Yeah. And let's compare life in Odessa before the war. You
Mhm.
remember that time, yes, and now when the city is in the war time.
Mhm. I think Odessa before war, people just felt, I think people were happier, they were less suspicious. For example, when I would need to go somewhere by taxi, it was very common that taxi drivers would engage in a conversation with me, trying, they wanted to know where I'm from, where I'm going. They would just be happy to start a conversation. And I think that nowadays people feel a bit more, you know they try to be more quiet.
Yes.
That very light mood that used to last forever, I think that this changed. But also, the other thing that changed because of war is that it became, of course, much more common to have certain days with lack of electricity or water, and depending on what happens, sometimes the public transportation can be affected as well.
And has something changed? I mean, different aspects of our life, shopping, supplies, culture, transport, or it's the same as before?
Yeah, I think there was a change even during war, because I remember on the first weeks or months of the war, many shops were closed, many businesses broke, people left the city. So,
Yeah.
but with time, I can see that people started returning. So there, even though it was still during war, there was this change. More businesses closed, other business came, people left the city, other people returned. But all in all, it is still possible to find everything one needs, despite the context that we are living in right now. I don't feel like we lack any kind of product in particular. We can always find what we want. There was a time when, for example, I remember that there was an increase on the price of the products. In some places, it was getting harder, for example, to get some medicaments because the logistic was, impaired.
Yes.
But nowadays, I don't feel this problem anymore.
And everything is working. I mean, theaters and the concert halls, yes,
Yes.
museums
Mm-hmm.
and
Yes.
everything. What
To
about
my sur- uh,
tourists here?
uh,
Have you seen any tourists?
Tourists, no.
No.
This year at least, I haven't. I know some other Brazilians that actually moved here to Ukraine before war and who didn't leave, but they are not here in Odessa. They are in Kiev right now.
And about the language, do you speak Russian or Ukrainian here? I know you speak English to
Mhm.
people, yes. And what language do you prefer to communicate here in Odessa?
Mhm. Well, I speak English much better than I speak Russian, that's for sure. But I think like many other people that, decided to or kind of felt like they didn't want to speak Russian anymore. I was maybe till now, I feel a little bit divided. I wish that the language wouldn't be so hard, so I would learn Ukrainian. But the truth is that when I am on the city and I need to do something like interact with a salesperson from a drugstore or from the supermarket, I usually try to speak Russian because I haven't studied Ukrainian like at all. So
A problem, I think, no? If you speak Russian here and in the shops, you communicate to the shop assistants or someone, and our people in the streets, they speak Russian and they answer in Russian, yeah?
yes, yes. I think rarely it happens that I speak something in Russian and someone talks to me in Ukrainian, but I think they understand that me being a foreigner, like
Of course.
if the person doesn't want to speak Russian, doesn't want to answer to me in Russian, then my best try is English. But if the person cannot communicate with me in English, then it has to be Russian
Of
anyway.
course.
But I don't feel like that people are hostile because I speak Russian. I Although I certainly noticed that there are many more people from Odessa that chose to start speaking Ukrainian after war started. I don't feel that there is any kind of hostility because I speak Russian to them. Not at all.
Mhm. Nostalgia, Paula, is it real for you? How often do you communicate with your friends in Brazil or somewhere else, both those who stayed in Brazil and new friends here in Odessa?
I think nostalgia is totally real. Just yesterday, I was talking to my friend Lisa, who is from Ukraine, but she is now living in France. And I was just telling her, how I miss the summer days from before war. It just felt good and nice. There is this feeling of any other problems of our lives, they were just small. We didn't have to make such hard decisions. And I think war kind of forces us to think of big questions like, should we live in this house? Should we live in this city? Should we have raise a family here or somewhere else? Is it time to start looking for a job in another country? So these type of questions, they happen more during wartime. But before war, I just felt like it was such a pleasant experience. Odessa to me always felt like a big cultural, historical city to be explored and to be lived. There's a lot of art and culture. And I think that because of war, it is very hard to have that feeling again.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And people often wonder how the internet works in Ukraine, in Odessa, for example. Is it expensive? And in general, is life expensive here?
Well, to talk about internet, I think compared to Brazil, it's very cheap. I mean, here we pay like $5 for the internet, and we have more
Hmm.
than enough, like for what we need in terms of uploads and downloads. The internet works just fine. Even on the street, like if you depend on, the tower
Wi-Fi.
of
Yeah.
communication, yes, it works just fine. Um, and I think that life here is certainly not expensive when compared to Brazil. But maybe this is my view as a foreigner, because I have the impression that people from here that earn in local currency, they might find life not so cheap.
Hmm. And the life is not very expensive here, I understood from your.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. And how often do you travel in Ukraine or somewhere else?
Unfortunately, I wish I had more chances to travel here in Ukraine. Um, Unfortunately, the reasons that brought me to Kiev was because there was a time when Sergei, my husband, was working there,
Hmm.
and I stayed there with him for 2 months. And during war, I remember we moved to Lviv, and we stayed there around 4 months. Um, but I haven't traveled much, and I think that even though people here seem to be very used to traveling, by train, in Brazil we do everything by car. And as I don't have a car here, it feels that it's an extra work to go somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And now, because of war, we just don't go anywhere. Indeed, we are just staying here.
And what is the difference between our city and Lviv, for example? It's an atmosphere and language and people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly people in Lviv, they speak much more Ukrainian than here in Odessa. But I think my husband and I didn't have such great experiences in Lviv. I think people, they feel they are less communicative. I think here in Odessa, people tend to, it's just easy for people from here to talk. Maybe because of the beach, maybe because there is some light mood in the city. Of course, even though it sounds strange because Lviv has definitely much less attacks than Odessa, and I think this changes
Mm-hmm,
things a
mm-hmm,
lot. But I think people here from Odessa, they just feel, it's easier to communicate with them. They feel very open-minded, and it's nice to nice and easy to have a conversation with people from here when compared to Lviv. I think in Lviv they carry more this vibe of, you know, big city. Definitely, they are more in contact with the culture of Ukraine. Maybe also because of the language, but overall, I think that Odessa feels better. It feels that there is more space in Odessa,
mm-hmm.
like the super large sidewalks. We don't have that much in Lviv, so the sensation is different.
Yeah, yeah, understood. And what advice would you give to those ones who are going to Odessa to
Mhm.
stay or to live alone?
Yeah, well, for now, I would say because of war, my recommendation would be always carry your documents, obey the law, don't take photos of military infrastructure, don't take photos of explosion sites, and don't try to walk outside during curfew hours, So, and of course,
Of
and that
course.
it's very important to have extra water at home, have a nice power bank, and candles.
Mm-hmm. Candles, even candles.
Yes, yes.
Why? Why?
Well, because well, I think when you have no light at night, unless you want to use your phone to turn something on, but I think that candles at least create a certain atmosphere that is
Yes,
pleasant.
sure,
It feels
sure.
almost charming.
Like on a date, yes.
Yes, exactly. Like the perfect reason to have like a dinner with candlelight.
Oh, really good idea, Paula. Thank you very much for the interview. I
Oh,
appreciate your opinion, your time you took, and see you in
thank,
our again.
thank you so much, Nina. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye bye.